Hello, fellas and ladies. Well, if I'm gonna keep predicting, these frickin' trophies, key aspect that's coming up in regards to predicting the Oscars is, of course, the fall festivals. The moment that they become unanonymous, they're not just like names anymore. People actually, see them. And we actually get a glimpse of if these are actual real things. It's June. TIFF already announced what's open in the festival. Thankfully, it wasn't going to be one I was going to talk about, but considering that they're already in an announcement mode, I guess I got to speed this process up. So I'm going to do this now, where I predict every single festival, not light up. Fuck. I'm going to guess which movie is going to which of the 4 major fall festivals: Venice, Telluride, TIFF, and NIF. The New York one. I don't know. Is NIF like the nomenclature for it? I'm calling it NIF in this video. I don't care. Full disclosure, I'm gonna go movie by movie. I did some research, but also a lot of this is kind of going off of vibes. I will not be predicting we all know Wicked or Avatar. They're not doing any festivals. We all know that. I'm also, just for the sake of clarity, because I already got a lot. I'm talking about over 60 movies right now. For the sake of clarity, I'm not gonna do movies that are we all know are just TIFF nothing movies, like that movie Unstoppable from last year, that are just kind of there for celebrities. So stuff like Toe or The Long Walk, I'm not gonna bother dealing with them. Also, as a side note, my buddy Ezra Cabero also has a article out very similar to this. So if you want to get a second opinion, I was just checking that out because he's a good boy and I like him. Let's get into this. Again, research and vibes. That's what I'm going off of. After The Hunt, the new Luca Guadagnino film. I mean, we all know this is a Venice premiere, pretty much locked up. That's where it's gonna first showcase. That's obvious. This guy loves going to Venice. Almost all of his movies have premiered at Venice. Even Challengers, which was, it was delayed, but it was announced to premiere at Venice before it got delayed. If we're going purely off of what Queer did, it's pretty safe to say that Venice, TIFF, and New York feel like the way to go. But Bones and All did Telluride and not TIFF. I can pretty safely say New York. Guadagnino seems to have a really good relationship with those guys, and I'm gonna say that this one skips Telluride and then goes to TIFF. Perhaps I'm saying that selfishly. You're gonna notice I say TIFF a lot. Perhaps it's selfish because I'm going to this one and I want it to be as loaded as possible. But also, it is TIFF's 50th anniversary, so I think they're gonna want to go all out. And perhaps this will be TIFF will be very high loaded this year. So yeah, my prediction is that it'll go to Venice, Toronto, and New York, and then skip Telluride. Alpha, the new film from Julieta Cornell. This premiered at Cannes. Typically, if you premiere already, you're practically disqualified from Venice, and that will go for practically every movie. Not even practically, just every movie that has already premiered. There could be an exception. I think Living premiered at Sundance and then went to Venice anyway. But for the sake of clarity and safety, I'm just going to not predict any movie that premiered already to go to Venice, and that includes Alpha. Both Titan and Raw went to TIFF, so that feels like a guarantee. I don't know if it'll be Midnight Madness this time around. Doesn't seem quite that speed, but I do think either way, I'm watching that movie in Toronto. And judging by this movie's reaction, not that quality always matters to festivals, but judging by this film's reaction, I'm thinking that'll just be it. I think that'll just be Alpha's entire Fall Fest run. Perhaps New York can take it. I can see that. Titan didn't even go to Telluride, but Titan did go to NIF, but also the Titan is a different animal than Alpha almost entirely. So yeah, my prediction is just Toronto. Anemone, the directorial debut of Roman Day-Lewis and the big return of Daniel Day-Lewis. A lot of these I did my research on, but for this one, it's something like this. I can only go off of vibes. Focus Features does like to do a festival run for all of their movies. Although they might be pretty stacked this year. I'll go into it when I get to other films. Something like Song Sung Blue, which I'm not going to talk about. It's clearly a TIFF exclusive. For Anemone, though, I got to go off of vibes because I don't know what Roman Day-Lewis, because this is his first film. This gives me Telluride premiere vibes. It could be Venice premiere just because of the status of Daniel Day-Lewis. But I'm thinking Telluride takes it first, and then I also think Toronto's going to get it. I think that'll be the end of his fest run, though. Anne Lee is directed by Mona Fastfold. I feel like we're predicting a lot of what this movie's best outcome will be because of The Brutalist last year. And I get it, her and Brady Corbet are teaming up as a writing duo again. But I will say, her film, The World to Come, premiered at Venice in 2020. Now, God knows what would have happened afterwards if that year was normal. But it does lead me to believe that a Venice premiere will happen. You don't tend to see movies without distribution go to Telluride, so I'm going to say no to Telluride. I do think this movie's big enough with its big cast and its seemingly flashy, subject that I think Toronto will take it. And just on a limb, I'm going to say New York doesn't take it. Again, vibes are key here. At the Sea, directed by Cornel Mundruczó. Again, similarly, the real thing we have to go off of is Pieces of Woman, which unfortunately came out in 2020. Even then, it premiered at Venice and went to Toronto. So I'm going to say that. And again, no distribution means I'm probably not going to predict it for Telluride. Due to this cast, it does feel like a very TIFF film. But I'm also going to say New York snags it. That feels right to me. The Ballad of a Small Player, directed by Edward Berger. Both All Quiet on the West Front and Conclave went to TIFF. He's definitely at a career high right now, so I'm definitely going to say TIFF continues that. However, this one feels a lot more low-key and lighter than his last two films, just based purely on the book. Now, he could butcher it. Who knows? But if it's as sedated as the book suggests, then I actually think that Venice will host the world premiere of it. And I'm actually also going to say that Telluride takes it as well. I think it will go to every festival except for New York. A Big Bold Beautiful Journey, directed by Kogonada. I'm just going off of what I think everyone agrees with this one. This is a Toronto exclusive. This just screams like, studio, like, sappy, like, TIFF premiere. With the two movie stars with Colin Farrell and Margot Robbie, it makes a lot of sense to just go to TIFF. I can see Venice also snagging it, but Sony seems to be in good hands with TIFF. Saturday Night one last year, although it also on Telluride. Dumb Money, The Woman King, it seems right to me. Like a studio film would go to TIFF. Not all of them, but it would. Blue Moon, directed by Richard Linklater. Having already premiered, I'm going to say Venice is out. As for what happens there, you also got to take into account that this is not the only Richard Linklater film I'm going to be talking about today. Blue Moon does have an obvious, biopic kind of vibe going on, but the buzz was a little sedated out of Berlin. Not bad, but just sedated. So I'm actually going to go on a limb here and say only Telluride snags this. A lot of the time, films that, premiere only, at a festival that isn't Cannes tend to not do the whole festival run, just kind of go here from here. But I'm saying Telluride only for Blue Moon. And while we're on the subject of Richard Linklater, we might as well talk about Nouvelle Vague. Netflix picked this up. They might want to put this on a little bit of a higher spotlight. Now granted, Linklater has he did Cannes twice in 2006 with two different films. So him going to a festival for both Blue Moon and Nouvelle Vague is not entirely impossible. And his relationship with New York is good enough where I can actually imagine them doing both. But I am going to say, just for safety, that there is a one-on-one thing. So, I am going to predict that Nouvelle Vague will go to TIFF due to its subject. And I do think that New York, Linklater has a very good relationship with the New York Film Festival. So I am going to say he's guaranteed to go to at least one of them. I actually think Nouvelle Vague could be a gala film. But I am going to say that TIFF and New York are what Nouvelle Vague's festival run will look like. Begonia, directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. This is another tricky one. I made a rule to myself that I will not be predicting any movie does all four. However, there are a couple that can, Begonia being one of them. We all know this movie's having its world premiere at Venice. That's pretty locked in. It's what happens afterwards. I actually think New York is a pretty safe bet. But it's really, will that be the US premiere or will it not be a premiere at all? Poor Things and The Favorite both did Telluride, whereas Toronto they skipped, which is a little weird. Yorgos Lanthimos has gone to TIFF in the past. He's Killing Sacred Deer, Dogtooth, The Lobster, all that went. So I'm not really sure why Yorgos has been skipping lately, but if I had to go with one, he seems to be preferring Telluride recently. So I'm gonna say that it skips Toronto and has its North American premiere at Telluride. The Christy Martin biopic, currently untitled, so I'm just gonna call it Christy Martin, directed by David Mykod. I think we all agree TIFF loves the hell out of their sports biopics, and we got a big movie star in Sydney Sweeney in front of it. I mean, that's a TIFF movie right there, but I actually think that Telluride will be the first to show it. I think that just has, it's, small enough. It's definitely going to have a spotlight, but it's small enough where Telluride can justify it. And based on nothing but pure vibes, I'm thinking New York also takes it. The Chronology of Water, directed by Kristen Stewart. Venice is off the table, as it already premiered at Cannes. Some might look at the reviews being a little lukewarm and think, well, maybe that'll, go to TIFF. Maybe New York, but that's, about it. But, Kristen Stewart seems like she has a lot of favor currying with other festivals. She's a real festival darling. So I'm actually going to say, I actually think Chronology of Water is going to go to all three festivals, except for Venice, of course. Telluride, Toronto, and New York. The Death of Robin Hood, directed by Michael Sarnowski. You know what? I'm still vouching for The Death of Robin Hood. I still think it's a 2025 release. I think it's going to be ready in time. And with that has Venice premiere all over it now. I think Sarnowski has earned enough, that he could be a festival player. I also think, given its subject and its stars, I think Toronto will probably also want to take it as well. The Telluride probably won't happen. New York could, but I don't want to go crazy, so I'm going to say New York does not take this. Delivery from Nowhere, the Bruce Springsteen biopic, directed by Scott Cooper. I was close to saying that this was not going to be a festival player until its recent release date moved to October. Now I kind of think this will be a festival guy, and we're all thinking the same thing. This got Toronto's name written all over it, and I do agree, but I also think that Telluride would be the first to premiere it. Honestly, Venice could premiere too, but I'm actually going to say Telluride has a little bit more luck with that. I can even see New York on the table, but I'm actually going to say that it does skip it and just goes Telluride in Toronto. This doesn't feel like super rah-rah, like, big, like, stomp your feet musical biopic, so I'm not going to go nuts here, but I think it's like, all right, Jeremy Allen White, biopic, makes sense for those two. Die My Love, directed by Lynn Ramsey. Again, Venice is off the table as it's already premiered. And from there, I think Toronto makes sense as a North American premiere. It being the 50th anniversary, Lynn Ramsey is no stranger to Toronto. She's gone for practically all her films except for You Were Never Really Here. But like New York, it makes so much sense for Die My Love as well. I think that will absolutely happen. Could even be a gala movie. The Drama, directed by Christopher Borgley. Dream Scenario premiered at TIFF, and perhaps this could go further. Perhaps this could premiere earlier, but I actually think, star power, all that, it feels like a TIFF premiere. New York might also take it, to be honest. I'm rushing through these because I don't want to, the fuck am I going to talk that much? A lot of these are vibes. Eleanor the Great, directed by Scarlett Johansson, already premiered, so Venice is out. A lot of people will go look at like what the film is about, the fact that it's directed by a celebrity, and go, well, that has TIFF written all over it. I'm actually going to say TIFF skips on it. I have nothing to back that up. In fact, if I was being logical, I'd say TIFF does take it. I don't know, I'm just feeling that Scarlett Johansson, she wouldn't take this movie everywhere, and I think that it's easier for her to go, I can just go to Telluride in New York and that'll be it. And I don't know, I get the vibe that that's just what's gonna happen. So I'm thinking North American premiere at Telluride, and then it takes a stop in New York. I think New York is a little more likely than TIFF, to be honest. Ella McKay, directed by James L. Brooks. This is one of the few films I'm predicting here that I can see skipping the festivals altogether, because initially it's coming out in December, which could be alright. It's not really close to being finished, and maybe 20th Century's not really looking at this as like a big festival film, and they kind of just want to release it. But if it is going to a festival, we all know what's gonna happen. It's a TIFF premiere, and that's it. Maybe Venice goes for it, just given James L. Brooks and like the star power. But I think this got big TIFF energy. Father, Mother, Sister, Brother, directed by Jim Jarmusch. This is one of the easiest ones to call, in my opinion. Whenever Jim Jarmusch doesn't premiere his films at Cannes, and they come out with like after September, that motherfucker premieres in Venice. That's gonna happen again. And furthermore, every time one of his films have released from September to December, they have went to TIFF and New York. So this one's easy. Venice will premiere, skip Telluride, North American premiere at Toronto, and then goes to New York. Frankenstein, directed by Guillermo del Toro. This is probably going to be a huge elephant in the room on the fall festival circuit. We all kind of know what's going to happen with this, but I do want to pontificate a bit further. We all know Toronto's taking it. Like, that feels super locked in. And for a while, I was like, let's hope so. But this one seems pretty geared up to be at the fall festivals. And just recently, Del Toro actually curated a Cinematheque series for TIFF. Not even of his movies, just some fucking horror movies that he likes. So they seem to be in good hands, and so TIFF seems pretty guaranteed. I feel like a world premiere there is very possible. However, I am going to say it starts off at Venice. Good Fortune, directed by Aziz Ansari, his directorial debut. Got a pretty good cast. You got Aziz, who also got Keanu Reeves, Keke Palmer, Seth Rogen. Pretty solid cast. We all agree that TIFF is like such an obvious spot for it. But I'm going to go on a limb here. I'm actually going to say that Telluride gets the world premiere status for Good Fortune. I get the case that Toronto could do it, but I'm actually going to say Telluride does. Just, again, vibes. Hamnet is directed by Chloe Zhao, and is another film that I can see going to every single festival. I have no question in my mind that Toronto and New York are going to take it. It's more, where is this movie going to world premiere? Chloe Zhao has dipped her toe in practically every single fall festival in her very short career. And given her recent Oscar success with Nomadland, I think every festival is going to want to grab it. It's just, where will she go? Again, I can see all four going, but I'm just going to go on a limb here and say Venice is the world premiere status for Hamnet, although I can definitely see Telluride doing it. But I am going to say it skips Telluride for now, but I could change my mind on that. Hida is directed by Nia DaCosta. As I've said in videos in the past, I think Hida is going to be a much bigger deal than meets the eye. So much so that I think Venice is going to kickstart it. I think that'll be a good spot for it to really catch on and be considered like this big deal. I think maybe Telluride doesn't go for it, but I think Toronto and New York feel very, very good places for Heated to go. Him is directed by Justin Tipping, is produced by Jordan Peele, and it's a horror movie for Universal. I don't know what it is, but I am so confident that this is a absolute world premiere exclusively at TIFF. And this director doesn't have a lot to go off of, but Universal does tend to send at least one of their films to TIFF. 2023 is an odd year where like everything was off. Last year we got The Wild Robots. 2022 they sent Bros and The Fablemans. 2021 they even sent Dear Evan Hansen, Green Book, First Man. Like they are no strangers to this festival. And I think Him is the best one for Universal to send. So I'm saying that Him will go. The History of Sound, directed by Oliver Hermanis. Venice is off the table. So I'm actually going to be quick and say Telluride, TIFF, and New York will take it. I don't really have a case against any of these festivals taking this movie. It feels, again, the reviews aren't like groundbreaking, but like, it's got enough hype around it that I think it'll have a case for all three. So I'm gonna hedge my bet to say all three of them take it. Maybe Telluride doesn't, who knows, but I'm thinking yes for all three. I Want Your Sex, directed by Greg Araki. We are all shocked to see it not go to Cannes. That caught me off guard big time. I don't know, something about the air of this movie that I think that this isn't going to be a big festival film, might just premiere and fuck off. So I'm actually going to say Venice takes the world premiere of this film, but skips the rest of the festivals. And I don't know, maybe disappears. If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, directed by Mary Bronstein. This film premiered at Sundance earlier this year, got pretty big raves. Taking Venice off the table due to the fact that it already premiered. I think Telluride is a pretty obvious bet. Same with New York, honestly. I think Telluride and New York are very obvious bets for this movie. But I'm actually going to say TIFF doesn't get If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, which is strange because A24 does tend to send their movies to Toronto, although there are notable exceptions. So I think this might be one of them. Is This Thing On, directed by Bradley Cooper? I am officially saying that this film will go to the Fall Fests. If it doesn't, it might just be because it's not finished yet. They didn't wrap production that long ago, but it doesn't feel like the post-production set of this movie is that big. I can see this premiering at Venice, but I'm actually going to say it premieres at Telluride. And I get the vibe I get from this movie is that it's a little, it's not this big, gargantuan drama. I think it's actually feels like more of a light comedy. So with that in mind, I think Toronto, and Bradley seems to have a really good relationship with New York, so I'm going to say Toronto and New York both take it. But I think It's This Thing On is going to have a really good festival run. Searchlight might want to put as many eyeballs as possible. It Was Just an Accident, directed by Jafar Panahi, the Palme d'Or winner. I mean, the Palme d'Or winner in the past couple years have just kind of railroaded. They just kind of go to all the fests and get as much eyeballs as they can. I think this will be no exception. I think Telluride, TIFF, and New York are definitely going to take the opportunity to screen this movie and get as much buzz as they can. Jay Kelly, directed by Noah Baumbach. This is one of the hardest ones to not say goes to all four, but I am, again, rules are rules. Venice is going to premiere it. We all know this. And New York is going to take it. It will probably be a gala movie as well. It just kind of comes down to Telluride and TIFF. Which movie is going to be the North American premiere for Jay Kelly? And again, TIFF is having its 50th anniversary, and I think Baumbach seems to have a better relationship with Toronto than it is Telluride. So I'm going to say TIFF takes it. Again, maybe I'm thinking too selfishly, but it makes sense to me. Kathryn Bigelow movie, I mean, God knows if that movie exists at this rate, but if it does, I think Venice is a pretty safe world premiere place. Hurt Locker only really got its status cemented because of Toronto, but I am still gonna say it skips it and goes right to New York. Telluride also skipped. Keeper, directed by Osgood Perkins. You know what? I looked into it, and Perkins, he premieres a lot of films at Toronto in the Midnight Madness section, so I'm gonna say solely he does that this year. He's definitely on a bit of a career high, and on top of that, Neon loves sending their movies to TIFF. You can look into it. It's very rare. There's notable exceptions like Ferrari, but Neon loves sending their films to Toronto. Typically, almost always their entire slate. Kiss of the Spider Woman, directed by Bill Condon. Once again, premiered already, so no Venice. We all know TIFF has taken it. This is pretty much a gimme. But with that in mind, I also think it'll actually take a pit stop at Telluride. Feels like the kind of thing that would happen, so I'm gonna predict it, and maybe New York could happen, but I'm actually gonna say no to New York. Clara and the Sun, directed by Taika Waititi. His last two films world premiered at Toronto. I'm gonna say this, other than Thor, and I'm gonna say the same thing happens here if this movie even is coming out this year. It might be it, honestly, for this movie. I mean, granted, this feels a little more high key than his other two films, so maybe Venice is on the table, but it's always a safe bet to say Taika only does TIFF. Late Fame is directed by Kent Jones. Again, no distribution. I'm not going to predict it for Telluride. I actually think world premiere will be Toronto. I get the vibe that this is a very, I think it's gonna be a bigger deal than people are expecting it to be, and I think Toronto could be a very good launching pad for it. New York also feels like a really solid place for this to go. Left-Handed Girl, directed by Shi Ching-soo, premiered already, so it will not be going to Venice. Now that Netflix has it, I think it's gonna do all three: Telluride, TIFF, and New York. I feel like that's a pretty solid run for this movie that Netflix might want to give it. Generate some buzz, especially with Sean Baker's name attached to it. Marty Supreme, directed by Josh Safdie. I think there is a path of this doesn't go, simply because it might not be done yet. But my stake is that if this is going to the Fall Fest, I think A24 put too much stake in this movie to skip Venice and Toronto, like the two biggest festivals here. It might be hard not to get those Timmy red carpet photos. But also the Safdies have a really good relationship with New York, so I think New York will also take it. Mastermind, directed by Kelly Reichardt. No Venice, as it already premiered. And I think TIFF will be the North American premiere for it. Again, Reichardt, other than her last two films, she is a huge TIFF girly. So I'm saying that TIFF takes it. New York will also probably take it. I think more than TIFF, I think she is really big on New York. Mother Mary, directed by David Lowery. I've definitely heard some mixed things, but I think, it's too high profile to skip the festivals altogether without causing suspicion. Or maybe that's why it skips festivals. Either way, I think Venice will be the premiere, and I actually think, I wonder if Mother Mary will have a gala premiere at New York. I think that's very possible, but I think it is going to New York, though. Venice and New York is my prediction. And then skips Telluride and Toronto. Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie, directed by Matt Johnson. I mean, Matt Johnson is literally a Toronto boy through and through. Neon, I can't wait for this Midnight Madness premiere at Toronto. Venice, Telluride, NIF. Sorry, sucks to be you. No Other Choice, directed by Park Chan-wook. I think we all know this is going to have its world premiere at the Venice Film Festival, since it wasn't ready in time for Cannes. From there, it might be easy to say Toronto and New York, and I am going to say Toronto, but I'm actually going to say New York maybe doesn't get this one. I could be very, very wrong about that, but I am thinking that Toronto, Park Chan-wook goes to Toronto, and I am maybe thinking that, I don't think every movie's going to go to every festival, and I do think NIF's going to take some strays. Decision to Leave went to New York, but that movie was riding off of a whole lot of buzz, whereas No Other Choice won't have that buzz until it premieres at Venice, and at that point it's too late. So I'm actually going to say it doesn't go to New York. One Battle After Another, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. This is a pretty big one. I think the fact that it's coming out at the end of September kind of confirms that Venice and TIFF are going to happen. TIFF less so. I can see him wanting to not go there. But he's no stranger to that festival. Phantom Thread and Licorice Pizza did no festivals, so grain of salt there, of course. But I do think because this movie's coming out so soon, I think that One Battle After Another will be going to both. The movie does come out before NIF begins. Last year, New York did a little thing for Megalopolis right before the festival began. I don't quite count that, so I'm gonna say no to New York, but I can see this movie doing that. Killian, the film that premiered at Cannes, directed by Harry Leighton, with Alexander Skarsgård being a BDSM biker. TIFF. At least I hope. Won't go to Venice because it already premiered, but I think TIFF, again, A24 does tend to send their stuff to Toronto, and I think this movie will probably get a nice crowd going. I also think New York will take it. The Plague, another film that went to Cannes that got a little bit of buzz, directed by Charlie Polinger. I actually think this is going to be a lone Telluride film. I don't know. Again, vibes. Rental Family, directed by Hikari. A lot of people are going to say lone TIFF. And, for reasons I'll discuss later, I'm going to agree with that. But I wouldn't throw out a Venice premiere. Hikari is by no means a, very simple filmmaker. Her sensibilities are not purely U.S. based. So I'm not going to, rush to dump Venice. I don't think it's going to be a simple crowd pleaser. But yeah, I'm going to say only TIFF. Resurrection, directed by Be Gone. Due to its concept and its, scale, I think TIFF feels like a pretty solid bet for it. As for what comes after, I think it's got to do something else, but I think TIFF makes so much sense as a North American premiere that I'm going to say New York goes after, because I think TIFF first. Rivals of Amziah King, directed by Andrew Patterson. I have said this whole video that having no distributor is not always the best sign for going to Telluride, but I think this one will make an exception. I'm actually gonna be a little bold and say that's the only festival it goes to. I don't know what it is. I just feel like they're gonna fuck it. I feel like they're gonna fuck it up. I can't explain why. Because they should be going to TIFF, but I feel like they're gonna fuck it. Roofman, directed by Derek Chanfrance. Again, the guy's got a good relationship with a lot of the festivals, and he hasn't really been to one in a bit. But I do think, due to its studio and its scale, perhaps, I think Venice might want to take a stab at it. And then I think it's going to skip Telluride, although maybe I could be wrong about that, and go right to Toronto. You know, maybe capitalize on a possible Channing Tatum, like, Oscar buzz, like, boost that I might get. And then I think it will skip New York. The Running Man, directed by Edgar Wright. This is another film that I can very well, sadly, see not going to the festivals at all. Maybe it's not done. Maybe it's too high profile. I don't know. But if it is going, I think a Venice and TIFF run feel pretty secure if it is going to the festivals. You know, those are where movies like this go. Although, you know, not that Telluride in New York can't get a high profile film. I just think, you know, I think this is where Last Night in Soho went exclusively, and this feels a little bigger than that. So I'm gonna say Venice and TIFF. Sacrifice, directed by Roman Gavras. You know, it seems pretty mainstream. And I believe his last film went to Venice, so I'm gonna say this one does the same thing. Due to its cast, I think TIFF will also take it. Otherwise, I think this could be a skipping for Telluride in New York, although maybe New York can get it. I can see that. Secret Agent, directed by Cleveland Mendoza Filho. Again, it premiered at Cannes, got a lot of hype, and I think Venice will probably not take it because it premiered. But then I think Telluride, TIFF, and New York are gonna snag it. This feels too big to skip out on. Sentimental Value, directed by Joachim Trier. Honestly, same goes for that. Worst Person in the World actually didn't go to Telluride, but this feels a lot bigger than that. I mean, in terms of hype at the moment. So I think that will definitely do all three, keep on getting momentum. And you know what? Same thing. These are all Neon and Cannes films, but I'm gonna say the exact same thing for Sedat, directed by Oliver Lax. No Venice, and then does the rest of the run with Telluride, TIFF, in New York. As for The Smashing Machine, directed by Benny Safdie, you know, a lot of people will go, oh, that's got TIFF written all over it. And, you know, I get it. It's a sports biopic and Dwayne Johnson's in it, but I feel like we're forgetting who is behind, like, this film, who's, like, directing it. It's Benny fucking Safdie. It makes me think this isn't just going to be a conventional crowd pleaser. I am going to say this movie goes to TIFF, though, but I think Telluride will be the premiere for it. And other than that, I do have it going to New York. It is coming out on October 3rd, so I actually think it might open the festival. But again, Safdies have a really good relationship with New York in the film festival program. Sound of Falling, directed by Masha Shalinsky, premiered at Cannes, no Venice for this one. Apparently the movie can be a little cold, so... But, like, you know, that sounds like something that would skip TIFF, but I think TIFF will take it. But I also think Telluride will skip out on it. New York, that feels like a guarantee. Train Dreams, directed by Clint Bentley, premiered at Sundance, so no Venice. Netflix is going to be, like, doing a lot this festival run. And it makes me think that, like, something's got to give at Toronto. And, again, maybe I'm being too selfish when I say this is the one that skips Toronto, because it's, like, the one I want to see the least, even though I am excited. But, you know, Telluride seems like a pretty big gimme. And it feels like a NIF movie. Although Sing Sing did have its jump off spot, and this is the co-writer. So, you know, TIFF's not off the table. Two Prosecutors, directed by Sergei Loznitsa. Pretty buzzy film out of the Cannes Film Festival. This has, like, TIFF Contemporary World Cinema Program written all over it. I like, fully expect that to go there. And then maybe NIF takes it. No Telluride. Urchin, directed by Harris Dickinson. Again, being a Cannes premiere, you gotta exclude Venice, but... Man, you know what? This kind of feels like something that can go to all three, and yeah, I'm actually, just based on vibes, saying this will be a TIFF exclusive for the fall festivals. Maybe New York could take it. I could see that more than Telluride, but you know, I'm saying only TIFF. Wake Up Dead Man, directed by Ryan Johnson. We all know what I'm about to say. Knives Out and Glass Onion both did it. They both had their world premieres at TIFF and then fucked off for the rest of the run. And I have no reason to believe this will be different. Ryan Johnson clearly loves this festival, and the festival clearly loves it back. The Wave, directed by Sebastian Lelio. That dude loves TIFF. This movie's going to TIFF. But despite the minimal buzz, you know, I do think another festival makes sense. And I might go with Telluride, or maybe New York. Let's go with Telluride, actually. And then finally, we got The Wizard of the Kremlin, directed by Olivier Assayas. I do think this movie will have a festival run. I do think it's smart to have a festival run. I think a world premiere at Venice makes the most sense, but hey, he is no stranger to TIFF or New York. I couldn't find much to prove that he's big on Telluride, so I'm gonna say he skips it and goes right to Toronto, New York. Now, really quickly, before I'm finished up here, I do want to acknowledge something. I do want to acknowledge what I'm saying will world premiere where. I'm predicting 21 movies have its world premiere at the Venice Film Festival, which, you know, on paper may seem like whatever, that festival runs on world premieres, but usually it's between 13, maybe 16 major world premieres. And it doesn't leave too much room for smaller stuff to have its jumpstart at Venice. So that's the only thing that kind of concerns me about my current predictions. But for the record, I am predicting that Venice will host the world premieres of After the Hunt, Anne Lee, At the Sea, The Ballad of a Small Player, Begonia, The Death of Robin Hood, Father, Mother, Sister, Brother, Frankenstein, Hamnet, Hida, I Want Your Sex, Jay Kelly, the Catherine Bigelow thriller, Marty Supreme, Mother Mary, No Other Choice, One Battle After Another, Roofman, The Running Man, Sacrifice, and The Wizard of the Kremlin. Telluride, I'm predicting 6 major world premieres. That one's a little more on par and typical what we see from them. I'm predicting Anemone, the Christy Martin biopic, Deliver Me From Nowhere, Good Fortune, Is This Thing On, and The Smashing Machine. TIFF, there's no real, tell of what number there is. A lot of the time, the major stuff has already premiered, but as for TIFF, right now, I could see this switching. In terms of major world premieres, I'm predicting that A Big Bold Beautiful Journey, The Drama, Ella McKay, Him, Keeper, Claire and the Sun, Rental Family, and Wake Up Dead Man all premiere at TIFF. I'm predicting that no film has its world premiere at New York. That is typical. It's the last major festival. And New York is not really high on those world premieres. And not saying they don't have them, it's just not what they're known for. So I don't think this is a totally off-kilter prediction. I don't really know what would have its world premiere there, to be honest. And that is the end of that. That is my predictions for the fall festivals. Maybe I'm wrong. That is that. Let's grab a chair. And yeah.